Good morning, members. Before we start the agenda, the first item of business is to agree the continuation of Councillor Knowles and Councillor Goodridge as chairman and vice chairman. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you very much. So Councillor Knowles, Councillor Goodridge are once more elected for this municipal year as chair and vice chair.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you. Item one after that, first item really, is to receive the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of November and published on the council's website. Those agreed? Are there any apologies for absence or substitutions, please?
We have apologies from Councillor Blishin.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the public?
None received, Chairman.
And any questions from members?
No, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Item 6 is action taken by the Executive Director after consultation with the Chairman and Vice Chairman since the last meeting, and there hasn't been any, it appears. So we will move on then to item 7, which is Hackney Carriage Fares, which is set out in the agenda on pages 5 to 50. Mr. Hughes, would you like to introduce the item, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you are aware, we did a consultation on the Guildford methodology for the fare increase. Public consultation that ran from the 1st of April to the 18th of April. We received 3 comments. In theory, it was practically one. There was one main comment from one gentleman. He then followed up with a second further comment, and the third comment was agreeing with the first comment from a separate gentleman. He's put his questions in, which is a part of the report, his comments in, which I've done a comment to, a response to his points of view. I've spoken to the gentleman as well and advised him of our point, well, my points of view. Officers would like you to consider and give a recommendation to the executive on the Guildford methodology fare increase.
Thank you very much. As I've said, colleagues, the item is set out on pages 5 to 50. Any comments, please? Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. Referring to the comments from the resident about the fees, I did feel, if I may say so, he raised a valid point regarding the booking fees, the loss of the booking fee. He raised the issue that with modern technology, the majority of people are no longer picking up a taxi from the rank, so they will be phoning in, and that looking at the comments that he made, I did feel that our taxi drivers would be losing out if they were doing short trips that the majority of people might want. But we do live in a rural area, and people living in rural parts of Waverley actually do not have public transport, and so therefore they will probably be relying on taxis. So that was a consideration that I had. I think the suggestion was there was a booking fee introduced of £1, whereas looking at it would appear that Rushmore, Hart and East Hampshire, which are probably similar rural areas to Waverley, have a booking fee of £3. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davison.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm inclined to support what Councillor Ellis has just said. It does concern me that bookings often require ancillary staff within the taxi organisation to take the booking, not necessarily the taxi driver themselves. And there's a fee for that. And there should be a cost to recovery, in my view. However, the question which I've got at the back of my mind is maybe going through other councillors' minds is the extent to which the new licensing fees take into account the substantial rise in fuel costs. And the question which goes through my mind is how significant does our licensing manager think that this is a proportion of the costs incurred by our taxi drivers?
Thank you,
If I
Mr Hughes.
touch on your second point around the fuel increase, that is taken into account because we obviously, that's part and parcel of the Guildford methodology. You put in the fees. When we did it, it was set, it was higher than it, but it's not as high as it is now, but it was still quite high. The problem is also taken into account, you don't want to suddenly give them £5 a mile this month, this year, and then next year when we review it, and hopefully the fuel prices have come down, all of a sudden take it right down again. So we did set the mileage and took into account the fees at the time, which were increased on previous. With regard to the booking fee, essentially the Guildford methodology doesn't account for a booking fee. So that's one part. So we would be deviating from the Guildford methodology, and that's been tried and tested in the court. So I'd rather keep to that because otherwise it weakens it if we're taken away. But the booking fee is more, you can still charge for a booking fee as a private hire driver. They can charge what they want. So if you're booking, telephone booking, you can book a private hire operator of vehicles. The main difference between a private hire and a taxi is that a taxi can sit on a rank and it can be flagged down on the street. And that's predominantly wouldn't require a booking fee. That's the main difference between them. So if you wanted booking fees, like the gentleman that has commented, is an operator, he's a private hire operator. So if you use private hire drivers, he can charge whatever fee he wants, as long as he agrees it in advance with the customer. So there wouldn't be no need for it, but he can just add £10 on for a booking fee if that's what he wants to do, and tell you the cost of it is going to be plus £10 for booking fee. But a Hackney doesn't, and you've got the other issue is you have with these is what he was trying to get at. A lot of his comments is because of the rural area, is you might have the issue with somewhere like Frensham. So you want a taxi from Frensham to take you to Hindhead. So you ring a Farnham taxi or a taxi, and the taxi has to come to Frensham and then take you to Hindhead. He can only charge from Frensham to Hindhead, pick up to drop off, because it's all within the Waverley borough. And so they call that dead mileage. He wants to account for that driving from Farnham to Frensham and wants payment for that. And that's what he's talking about with, that's how we're going to lose out because people won't get taxis. But again, that's the legislation. He's not allowed to, as a taxi driver, charge more. But as a private hire operator, he can send out a private hire vehicle and again, agree the price and charge what he wants and take that into account. So they're slightly different regimes, and you've got to, again, if you want to be that taxi driver that you can pick up on the street, be a taxi Hackney. If you want to take bookings and be able to charge for dead mileage, then you can go for the private hire operator's license.
Thank you very much. Councillor Munro, I think, has got his hand up. I've just got a little note telling me. So firstly, welcome to the committee, David, and you're at home because you're not going to vote on anything because you haven't had training, which I understand, but please go ahead with whatever it is you wish to say.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm sorry I'm not with you in person. When I got a Zoom invitation, I assumed this whole meeting was on Zoom. I could have been there, but I'll know for next time. Anyway, my comments, having read all the papers, is that in principle that seems absolutely fine. But I couldn't see any reference, although I may have missed it, to tying this in with the council's green agenda. Presumably, since we want to become carbon neutral by 2030, we also want all taxis in the borough to become electric driven. I couldn't see any reference to that. I'm not sure how this council could actually influence these vehicles becoming electric, and I look to people who are more knowledgeable than I. But I do think at least there should be a reference here, and possibly in the future a changed fare structure for electric versus diesel or petrol, something like that. I can't propose a solution, but I do think it should be looked at by the executive.
Thank you very much. In fact, there is a policy which is part of the policy of the council for the use of taxis, and there are dates by which vehicles have to be changed. It's not in here because this is just the fare structure, but it has been dealt with. Mr. Hughes, do you wish to add anything?
Yeah, we have got in our policy about electric vehicles and try to encourage them. We've also, with the government, are doing a best practice guidance, and they're looking at it as well. The difficulty we have with it, and we are reviewing it again at the moment, because we talk about electric vehicles, hybrids and ULEV vehicles, but there was some recent comments in the government documentation talking about ULEVs being reduced from 75 CO2 to 50 CO2. And cars that we've got licensed at the moment, like Priuses, they fit in the 75 CO2, and if it drops to 50 CO2, then they would fall out and they wouldn't be suitable. So it's trying to find a solution in our policy where we can put something down that won't suddenly cut a load of drivers off or vehicles off. We're using currently at the moment an age policy under 4 years old, which will keep the vehicles up to date as such. So whatever the government and the new vehicles that are coming out, they're becoming more and more reduced in emissions or electric. We should keep up to date without having to change our policy every 5 minutes. But we are working on that at the moment, and we will be trying to encourage it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Could I just say that's very reassuring, Chairman, and I do appreciate the problems of actually getting some practical implementation, but thank you very much for that detailed reply.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chairman. Just going back to the booking fee business, you know, I think it's worth noting actually that we do have a lot of elderly people that are very dependent on either taxis or hire cars, and they do book taxis on a regular basis to take them shopping or to take them to the surgery or something. So, you know, you're always going to have that issue of them wanting to book their taxi. So, you know, I don't know how that would work out, but certainly, you know, the taxi can charge them a booking fee, or is that going to be taken away completely?
Currently, the booking fee we have removed.
Yeah, and this, you know, it does make me wonder whether the taxi drivers will say, well, you can't book now because we can't charge you a fee. And that I'm thinking of our elderly people in the borough, because it's not just in Havesmere, but a lot of them do book taxis. I know that for a fact.
They can book a hire car, I take
yeah,
it,
they can book a private hire
but not
vehicle.
okay.
And a taxi, and if the taxi wants to come, it's and do the journey, it's his business. But whether you cancel for the sake of 60p,
I know, but sadly they get to know their taxi drivers and they don't want anybody else, and they know them so well that you know, if they don't get that taxi driver or whatever, they sometimes won't book.
And they can charge, if it's going out the borough, they can charge whatever they like. So they can put on a booking fee or whatever fee they want to add on, as long as it's agreed, if it's going out the borough.
Thank you. Councillor Hyman.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The points which I wanted to raise have been raised already, particularly by Councillor Ellis and Councillor Davidson. So, but I'm not entirely sure how that how it affects the decision that I've got to make in a few minutes' time. Firstly, I'd just like clarification of the last thing that Mr. Hughes has told us, where I think he said, currently the booking fee we have removed. Is that the words you used?
Yes, in the.
Do you mean in the proposal or currently?
Oh no, currently there is one with our current tariff, but this new Guildford methodology doesn't account for a booking fee, and it's not one in the new scales.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that. So it's not currently removed, but it's a proposal to remove it because of the Guildford methodology. And the point I think that's been made by the objector or main objector on this is that the removal of the booking fee actually does the opposite of putting the prices up. We've put the prices up, haven't we? The removal does the opposite. Am I correct? The point that's been made by the main objector is that the removal of the booking fee reduces the price that's being charged, and it is therefore doing the opposites to putting the prices up. It's eroding the what would be making it more profitable or easier to operate a business, and it's making it more difficult by removing the booking fee. That's correct, isn't it? That we're putting the charges up, but removing the booking fee puts the charges down in practice for a lot of users. Yeah.
Well, not really, but well, it depends, because the first mile is, if you took a mile journey, it's an increase of £1.16. If on some journeys he charged a booking fee for that of 60p, all right, it was still gone up by 56p for the first mile, so it won't have gone down. There's still an increase of 56p if you take into account the booking. If you didn't have a booking fee, then it's if you just flag the vehicle down, then it would be a £1.16 increase. So it's not a drop. You've still got an increase on both, with or without a booking fee.
Sorry, I don't think you got the point that was being made there by myself and by the person who made the point in the first place, that the action is taking it in the opposite direction. Obviously, the action of removing the booking fee reduces the price that some people are paying, and therefore does not increase the viability of being a taxi driver. It's having the opposite effect. Am I right in that, or am I? I'm trying to get a straight answer out of this. Can you help me? Because I don't think it happened.
Yeah, so I think what Mr. Hughes said, the increase is £1.16. So there's still an increase when you've taken the 60p off. So it is going up, not what.
But not as much as it would if we weren't taking the.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. We won't labour that. The Guildford methodology is the cause of that. Why do we have to follow the Guildford methodology? It's the first thing that came to my mind, because if it doesn't, I appreciate that has been through a court case, but just because things have been through a court case and something has been ruled to be lawful, certainly to me doesn't mean that other things are not lawful unless the law says it's not. So, is there a reason that we have to change to this Guildford methodology? I know that we're in a sort of a business partnership with Guildford, but that doesn't mean we're going to adopt the same rules for absolutely everything, I'm sure. I don't really see or understand what the difference is with the Guildford methodology, even though a court said it's okay. Why would we want to be doing something, i.e. removing the booking fee, which is acting contrary to what we're actually doing? So that's my first question about is the Guildford methodology. Do we have to worship it, or is it just something that's, hey, it's an option for us if we want to go that direction? Because that's the way I see it. My other question has been raised by Councillor Davidson, but I'm not sure that we have got a full answer to it, which was in respect of diesel prices and the proportion, particularly of the costs of an operator. How much? Let's just assume at the moment for the next few years that there's going to be a lot of diesel taxis, because that'll give us an indicator. I understand from what's been said here that the price is currently being worked to our 2012 prices. The review we had was in 2014, but had been all the pricing and calculations, whatever, had been done in 2012. So it's 10 years old. And I certainly wouldn't think that the diesel prices now are in any way close to what they were back in 2012. But I'd like you to tell me what they were, and because obviously you've been through the calculations, you've got the figures, I'm sure, it's that back up the policy that or the proposal that's in front of us. What were the prices in 2012 for DERV? What they considered to be in the calculations we've got at present in front of us, because of course this was done a year and a half ago, or whatever, 2 years ago, and doesn't include the £1.82.9 that's on the pumps at the moment in Farnham for diesel. And what proportion of a taxi or a Hackney taxi driver's costs are their fuel prices?
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think if I can remember correctly, the committee did agree to use the Guildford method some time back when we were introducing this before the pandemic intervened. But if
Yes.
my mind is playing tricks, please tell me, Mr. Hughes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we brought a number of options before the committee, suggested fares from the drivers and the Guildford methodology, and the committee decided that we should go ahead with the Guildford methodology. Previous to that, our figures were random. There was they weren't robust enough, really. This is more robust system because we can save, whereas before people would put suggestions in, it would come before the committee would look at what they had put forward, other ideas they had themselves, and come up with a figure, and there was no sort of backbone to it. And you talked about the fuel prices in 2012. It wasn't based on fuel prices then. This new methodology does take into all these things into account, whereas before 2012 it wasn't based, we didn't have figures for the fuel, we didn't take that into account. It was just the information was given. The suggestions were discussed that drivers had put forward, and a figure was agreed on and publicised. So this new method, the Guildford methodology, has a set of figures, it has a target it works to, and it's robust, and it was taken to court by the Guildford drivers because when they introduced it, it was actually a fair decrease for them. They took it to court, it held up at court, and now suggested by licensing or solicitors, and this is the model to follow. Because it is more robust and it stands up, and it's based on a system that takes into account fuel prices, costs of vehicles, etc., depreciation of vehicles, etc.
May I come back on that, Chairman? Thank you. I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, I'd like to know, therefore, how many of the 650 licensing authorities or whatever there might be in the country, how many of them are now using the Guildford methodology? Because the question I suppose I'm really asking in that respect is that if we do not like the idea of the removal of the booking fee that's within the Guildford methodology, do we have to adopt that? I mean, we're free to change in the same way as we adopted the Guildford methodology, possibly without knowing the full implications of it at the time. It was just a recommendation we got from officers, and we trust what our officers tell us. If when it comes in front of us as a practical issue, and there's something there, I'd like to know, perhaps, I suppose, in some way, they might be asking too much. What does the Guildford methodology in the court case? What did they say about booking fees? I appreciate that it's a much better system. That's what we were told a couple of years ago, that it's a better system. And as you've repeated now, Paul, and explained, thank you, that it's allows us to take into account the realities of costs and whatever. Obviously, the prices we've got in front of us are from 2 years ago. What we're calculating using the Guildford methodology, the thing that's in front of us now is using the fuel prices from 2 years ago, I assume. Is that right? Or is it using
No, we're
stage fuel
using
prices?
the fuel prices from a few months ago when we updated it in, I think it was,
Was it prior to the war?
it's this year we've updated them, the figures.
Right, but was it prior to the large rise that happened for the
Sorry?
was it prior to the large rise which happened at the beginning of the Ukraine invasion?
Whatever, when we set it out and we went to consultation, we brought it before the executive committee, and the fuel prices at that stage, at that time, that was the price that we used then, the average price then.
Yeah, no, I'd rather diesel. I just know it's rocketed since the Ukraine invasion, and so I suppose this. I'm just asking, what was the price it was based on?
I think by looking at the papers, the executive agreed it on the 29th of March. So we were well into the Ukraine invasion by then. So the prices would have increased somewhat, and then went down 5p supposedly. But I think they've crept back up again now. But I don't think we can go round and round. I see the executive was the 29th of March according to the agenda. So the figures would have been sometime then. Yeah, thank you.
Right. And obviously the issue that comes around from this as well, because we've got to be realistic and we've got to allow them to be profitable, the operators. But what effect will this decision have on taxi prices overall? Because presumably the limiting of Hackney carriage fares creates in the market with private hire, competing with private hire vehicles, it keeps prices down. If the Hackney carriage fares increase by 20% or 50% or whatever they are going to increase by overall, depending on how far you go, there's different amounts it's going to make a difference to, so there's no straightforward. I don't know what the average is, but what will we see in next week's newspaper after we've made this decision in respect of what how it affects the prices of private hire vehicles as well, because it's the competitive element that's being obviously removed. What effect will it have overall? How much are we going to get slammed for the decision we're making? Regardless, obviously we have to make a decision that allows them to be profitable, as I say, but what effect is it going to have? Thanks.
Well, very luckily we won't be, because the executive will make the decision, so it'll be them that are slammed if anybody comes.
It's Waverley Borough Council making a decision.
Yes. We're very lucky, and it's always been us in the past, but it seems to have been removed. So that's very good. Councillor Ellis, did you want to speak again?
Thank you, Chairman. If I may, as part of the committee that discussed this, could I reassure everybody that we were given really extensive and full information by the officers on the Guildford methodology? We discussed it at length. We looked at it in detail. It's not to say that we didn't have occasional reservations about what was being proposed, but we looked at it, we considered it. No system is going to be, to my mind, 100% going to make everybody happy. But I'd just like to reassure Councillor Hyman, if I may, that we consider this in great detail.
Point of personal explanation, if I may, because that wasn't the point I was making.
Continue, please, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I've actually said enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to say something, Councillor Hyman, on explanation? Very brief.
Yes, because my question that I'd like an answer to is: do we have to take the Guildford methodology as a whole package? Can we?
Thank you.
Make a difference to it?
Personal explanation. We'll come to that. We are going to come to that. So please, Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Chairman. First, I'd like to say that I support the idea of having a methodology which is consistent, and adopting the Guildford one strikes me as, after our own review of it, seems to be quite a commendable one to follow. But I do think we need to recognize the fact that Guildford built its methodology on essentially what is a town, a substantial conurbation, different to the kind of more rural distributed environment that we find ourselves in Waverley. And I feel that there's nothing inconsistent with adding an amendment to the Guildford methodology to take into account the kind of operating environment our taxi drivers find here, and to include an amount for booking hackney carriages as opposed to rented cars. I don't think it's at all inconsistent to be able to do that. And I would recommend that, personally, I would recommend that we include that as part of our charges. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Darcy.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a couple of simple questions. With the excess passenger charge of 30p, is that just 30p for the whole journey, or is that 30p for a particular distance? Okay, thank you. And the other question was, we've been talking about the booking fee, and is that 60p? That's regardless of the distance.
Yeah, just it's a one-off fee.
So this discussion seems to be around 60p. When I mean, if you do a few miles, we're talking, I can't remember what the figures were, but sort of 15 or 20 pounds. So
I'm saying on the first mile, it's an increase of £1.16, and every mile after that, they're getting an extra 36p a mile increase on what they currently would get.
that's the proposal.
Now, yeah.
So the 60p is just at the very beginning, you get an extra 60p.
60p if you pre-booked it.
Yeah. So we've accepted that the Guildford method should be used, and now we're quibbling about 60p. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davison, you said you wanted to recommend with regard to the booking fee. So would you like to move an amendment?
I'm not sure exactly how I should word this, but I would ask that, or recommend that we include a booking fee allowable by hackney cab drivers for when they take a booking away from their normal stand. And as Councillor Keane has pointed out, it's people wanting to take a taxi to go to the dentist, the doctor, or to visit a friend, whichever. And they're not going to walk down to the station, for example, in Hazelmere.
I think what would it help if I said what you're moving is that we retain the booking fee?
Indeed, yes. Thank you.
Is there a seconder?
Sorry, Chairman, if I may just
Thank
point
you.
out, we'd need to say the amount as well. We'd need to agree that, I'm sure, Paul.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
it was, I think elsewhere is £1 or £3, our neighbours. So I would propose £1. I think it's 60 at the moment. But is that right? It's 60 pence at the moment, and we propose a £1.
I would think that's quite reasonable.
I'll second that. Sorry.
May I just ask a point of information before I vote? Is this booking fee at discretion of the operator rather than a flat booking fee for everywhere? Because as I understand it, the intention is that hackney carriage operators can make up for what was referred to earlier as dead mileage, if you like, by charging a booking fee if they're wandering out into the countryside, for want of a better word, but they have the option to either charge it when they're in the countryside or not charge it, let's say, if they're just going around the corner. So am I correct that it is up to them rather than it applies to all journeys?
Yeah, first of all, this is only for Hackney carriages, so private hires don't have this. So it's only for Hackney carriages, and if you use properly, then it should only be if they've pre-booked in advance to do it, and then it should be they can charge £1 to book it. But that's a booking fee. It doesn't account for the dead mileage side of it. They will get that if it's pre-booked, but that's not what it's for. It's for a booking fee for them to do the administration and taking the booking.
I think the question is, do they have to charge it?
Oh, no, this is the maximum they can charge. They can charge less than the tariffs. They can't charge more than the tariffs. But that would take, if we put £1 on, if we did a 1 mile journey, that would take it up to just short of £6. So it'd be £5.96 for a 1 mile journey if it was pre-booked with a booking fee. So I just want to account, because a lot of these people that might take these short journeys that can't walk to the town to go to a rank or something like that for a taxi, where they can still get private hire separately, but will predominantly be maybe disabled people or elderly people, and £6 a mile. Well, I don't know whether that's excessive or not in your opinion.
Thank you very much.
If I can just add, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Ward raises a good point, and I think the wording in the tariff document should be a discretionary booking fee of up to £1.
Okay, so we have a proposal which has been seconded. Now, does anybody wish to speak on that? Councillor Hyman.
Thanks. I was happy to second this, but it was really subject to getting an answer to the question that I asked in respect of the legal aspects of it, because for Councillor Ward's concerns, I do want to make sure that there was nothing in the Guildford methodology that said that we cannot and should not do this. I mean, I appreciate that in 10 years, prices have risen massively, or costs for taxi drivers have risen massively, and if the prices to the consumer have to rise accordingly, and it will help stoke inflation. Nevertheless, we've got to have a viable
yes, thank you, Councillor. I'm going to ask the legal officer to give advice on that now.
In response to the question, you can my apologies, in respect of the proposal, you can adopt whatever fee proposal that you would wish to do so. As explained by Mr. Hughes, I think the model and the standard which the committee have adopted previously was felt to be a useful template, so that there is a standard way of calculating that's clear to drivers and to the public that would use it. As Mr. Hughes has mentioned previously, it's been adopted on a base of 20p here. Some councils adopt on the basis of inflation or other costs and reference to it for quite distinct matters, and it can be quite a complex calculation, or there can be seemingly no logic or little logic to the calculations at all. So I think it's envisaged that this will be a template, as committees felt previously, that can be reviewed on a regular basis. I appreciate that we have slightly unusual circumstances with the pandemic and of course fuel prices, but it's a balancing act effectively between the costs of running the vehicle and ensuring it's a good, safe vehicle, and that there is an element of profit. And of course, that the fees that are proposed are those for downward negotiation by the driver with his consumer, if that assists.
Thank you. Just so market forces will be free to allow competition to make sure that prices don't become exorbitant in effect because of that.
Indeed.
That's very kind. Thanks for your very good explanation. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak on the amendment? Do you wish to say anything more, Councillor Davidson?
No, I'm sure that, as Councillor Keane has pointed out, regular users of Hackney carriages to take them on routine trips will probably have a relationship with the driver, and there will not be an application of the discretionary charge. It's just part of working together.
Thank you very much. So colleagues, the proposal is that we amend the recommendation that we make to the executive to say that a booking for charge of up to £1 will be included in this recommendation. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions?
Thank you, Chairman. So that's 5 in favour, 1 against and 2 abstentions.
So that amendment is carried. So that will amend the recommendation if we go forward with the full recommendation. So before we go to the full recommendation, are there any other comments? So colleagues, therefore, we go to the recommendations set out in the agenda on page, what isn't page, on item number 7. And that with the recommendation to the executive that the maximum fare tariff come into effect on the 17th of June 2022 as amended by our recommendation.
Chairman, may I just ask, I'm looking at page 5, bottom of page 5, 1.2 of our report, and it says recommend that the executive '(s) agree. And I'm not entirely sure I want that wording in a recommendation if it's, I don't think I do anyway, because it's the executive agrees, I would have thought.
Yes, I think there's just a typo. So the recommendation is the executive agrees the maximum fare tariff come into effect on the 17th of June 2022 as amended by amendment. Those in favour? Against? Any abstentions?
Thank you, Chairman. So that's 7 in favour, none against and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much, colleagues. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 8, which is a letter from the Minister regarding drink spiking. That is set out on page 51 of the agenda. It was circulated to all members, but I ask that it be included so that any comments can be made and be formally noted. Mr. Hughes, could you update us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was generally just to make you aware of the letter, as it was asked that the committee be aware, because licensing issues may come for you. From my own knowledge of licensing at Waverley, I have not been made aware of any incidents of spiking within Waverley at the moment. I did have a brief conversation with the police licensing officer, one of our police licensing officers, and he said it isn't massive within, that he's aware of within Surrey or particularly Waverley. There have been a couple of cases, I think, reported to Guildford, but again, I don't think there was any. These were complaints made after the event and no hospitalisation at the time to get any proof of whether there was chemicals within their bloodstream. So yeah, it's more to make you aware, because if we do have any issues that come to committee or when we're making policy further on down the line, that you consider the letter and take note.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a nasty and worrying development. And I think the more publicity almost that it receives, perhaps the worse the situation, the problem will get, and perhaps it will need to move to Waverley. I have to say that the letter really was making us aware of something, not asking us or perhaps giving us any indication of what we should do about it. But we do need to protect our residents, our probably females who are out trying to enjoy themselves and perhaps coming up against this type of predator. So I just wonder whether we do need to revise or to have a look at our premises licenses, to extend them to cover this and perhaps other areas of concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I do agree with Councillor Ellis, but I'm not sure how we could actually sort of enforce anything within our licensing sort of agenda to cover this. I think it's a very serious issue, and I think possibly it's down to the pubs and clubs to actually make people or the women aware that this can happen and that they must be on their guard. And I think, you know, if anything occurs in a club or a pub, I think it's probably more clubs than pubs. It would be more prevalent from watching stuff on the television. But and if anything did happen, I think it's for that person to go straight to the landlord or whoever's there, security guard, and say, look, I've been spiked. Can you call the police or whatever? I don't know that there is anything within our licensing agenda that we could actually do to stop this. I'm looking at Mr. Hughes here, but I do understand what Councillor Ellis is saying, and it is serious.
Thank you. I think the penultimate paragraph of the letter does show some of the powers that the licensing committee would have should this come to light. Mr. Hughes.
Yes, you'd be able to call a review on a premises if we were made aware of it, which we would probably expect the police to lead on as their crime and disorder. But there's a review could be taken of the premises. As far as putting a blanket condition on, we wouldn't be able to do that, because if an application comes to us, it's granted after 28 days automatically if there's no objections. If it was an objection, it would come to committee and then you could put conditions on. But if there was no objections, it would be granted, and I wouldn't be able to add a condition onto their licence, I don't believe, without.
I think, as the letter points out, partner working is key, and obviously there would be the ability to put conditions on those premises where individuals are not safe and protected and incidents do occur. That may include door staff, CCTV or entry searches where it's prevalent. But Mr. Hughes does liaise closely, I think, with police generally in terms of updates and in particular sensitive premises and generally.
Thank you. Councillor Hyman.
Thanks. Yeah, very quickly. I thank Mr. Malthouse for his letter, but I already knew that there was an issue with this in some places. It doesn't tell us really how much of an issue it is, and it doesn't add anything to our knowledge, and it just takes time on the agenda. And I really don't know why he's bothered to send this letter out, because it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't make anything any better, and it doesn't make anything any worse. But it's just a waste of time, as far as I'm concerned, to send us this letter without there being any government action that we could, you know, do something about ourselves where it is a problem. I'm afraid. I'll just agree to note it and move on. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think the letter was to draw to our attention some powers that we do have, as I say, that are set out in the penultimate paragraph. But colleagues, is the letter noted? Thank you. Item number 9 is the National Taxi Standards Consultation. Mr. Hughes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was just to make you aware of the consultation. If you wanted to respond yourselves, myself and the chair and vice chair, we have discussed and I've responded with some answers to the guidance. But yeah, if you would like to respond, the connections there, if you'd like to do it separately.
Thank you very much. Is that noted? Thank you. Item 10 of the Licensing Act 2003 items, which is the minutes of subgroup A on the 23rd of November. Is that noted? Agreed. Item 11, to note the minutes of the licensing subcommittee B held on 13th of December. Agreed. Noted. 12 is subgroup C held on the 28th of February. Noted. Agreed. And licensing and general purposes committee minutes page 63 to 68, held on 24th and 31st of January 2022. Are they noted? Councillor Darcy, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to ask, when you were talking about the response to the consultation, whether the response is available, what your response was, is available for us to see?
Yes, you can have a copy.
Thank you.
But I think we just noted that item 13. He's asking to speak.
Sorry, if I could speak just briefly, in terms of the consultation, I ought to mention that the closing date for that is the 20th of June, if that assists members who'd like to send individual replies.
Thank you. There are no other matters on the agenda, so I declare meeting closed. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Chair.